I used to think nothing was worse than my parents' divorce until my dad blamed me for the death of his unborn child. He cried, screamed, and said I had abandoned his wife when she needed me most. But there's one truth he refuses to face. I'm not the one to blame in this story. I'm only 18, but my relationship with my father has been fractured for a long time, almost beyond repair. When I was 7, my parents got divorced. Even though I was too young to fully understand adult matters, I still remember the heartbreak when my dad moved out. Not long after, he started dating different women, and the worst among them is his current wife. Unfortunately, we, my 2 younger siblings and I, had to meet each of them one by one as he brought them home. But none of them made me feel as distant from my dad as she did. From the very beginning, she tried to force her way into my mother's place. My dad and she didn't just want us to accept her as Dad's new partner. They wanted her to become our second mother. They would say things like, "Now you have 2 moms," or "You'll love your stepmom more because she's more fun." Words that sound harmless on the surface, but were deeply manipulative and controlling. For years, they kept trying to reshape our view of our real mother. Luckily, my mom kept everything, messages, emails, and transcripts of their conversations, in a folder. When I was old enough, she showed it to me. That was when I realized I wasn't crazy or ungrateful. I was just hurt by the very people who were supposed to protect me. My dad always wanted his house to be the main home, the place we felt most attached to. Meanwhile, he treated Mom's place as just somewhere we had to go because of custody rules. He and his wife constantly pressured my siblings and me to get closer to her, but all it did was push us further away. To me, she was never a mother. To my sister, she tried to turn her into a clone of herself. To my little brother, she was overly controlling and suffocating. And maybe because I'm the oldest, the only one who clearly remembers life before the stepmom came into the picture, I became the toughest one for them to deal with. I was never allowed to be myself in my dad's home, and slowly I began to understand I don't need to bend over backwards for adults who don't know how to love properly. Continuing from the tension within the family, the breaking point came when my father and stepmother's baby tragically passed away shortly after birth. Even though I wasn't there when it happened, I couldn't help but feel heartbroken when I heard the news. At the same time, I couldn't understand why my father chose to place all the blame on me. When I learned that the baby was stillborn, it felt like my entire world collapsed, not because I sympathized with the choices my father and stepmother made, but because I was deeply hurt by how they treated me. When my father tried to contact me, I refused. I didn't want to engage in a conversation that I knew would only cause more pain for both of us. But he didn't understand. In his grief and desperation, he pushed me to speak to him, demanded my presence, even forced my younger siblings to call me so I would finally pick up and listen to what he had to say. When I finally answered the phone, I never expected the words that came out of his mouth. In a fit of rage, he blamed me for not supporting his wife during her time of need. He said that because I didn't go with her to the hospital, because I didn't do anything to help save the baby, the child didn't survive. His words hit me like a slap in the face. How could he believe that I, a still teenage girl, could be responsible for the life or death of a child I never asked for? How could he place that kind of blame on me? I couldn't hold back anymore. As he kept yelling and crying, I had to defend myself. I told him to go cry to someone else. I said I wasn't the one to blame for what happened. I couldn't change the situation, and I refused to be held accountable for the mistakes he and his wife made. When he asked how I could act like that after losing a sibling, I responded with one sentence: "You're not a good father, and you keep proving it every day." My words may have been harsh, but they were the only way I could protect myself from the guilt and unreasonable responsibility he had thrown onto me. I couldn't continue to carry the weight of being blamed for everything wrong in this family. Over the years, I've endured so much disappointment and pain from the very people who were supposed to protect me. And even when I wanted to help, I was treated like an outsider. Now, I just want to walk away from these toxic relationships. I can't change the past, but I can take control of my future. And most importantly, I no longer feel the need to carry the blame for someone else's mistakes. My father and his wife can carry on with their lives, and I'll move forward with mine, no longer letting their accusations and contempt hurt me anymore. When my father finally realized that I would not bow to his blame and accusations, things became even more complicated. He wasn't just a disappointed father anymore. He had become someone who made me feel like I no longer had a place in my own family. The death of the baby pushed our relationship past the point of no return, and this time, it felt like every emotion between us had been permanently severed. I could no longer tolerate the disrespect from him and his wife, who had done everything in their power to make me feel like I didn't belong. The day I cut ties with my father completely, I can't say I felt relieved. It wasn't a sense of freedom, it was an uncomfortable emptiness. My father, the man I once considered a strong pillar in my life, had become someone I needed to stay away from. He not only wanted to hold me responsible for something I had no control over, but also tried to force me into things I never agreed with. The way he had treated me all these years, from pressuring me to love his new wife to never acknowledging his own mistakes, made me feel like I was no longer part of the family. Even though I felt some pity for him and his grief after losing an unborn child, I couldn't stay silent when he tried to blame me. Using his pain as a weapon against me only deepened the sense of betrayal. How could he ask me to sympathize with and support his wife when, for years, he never stood by me or the children he once promised to love and protect? I wasn't the one who caused the baby's death. I wasn't the one who broke this family apart. But in my father's eyes, I was nothing more than a scapegoat to carry his rage. When I chose not to care for his wife, I knew I was choosing to protect myself. None of us want to live in a family where every decision we make is seen as a mistake, a failure, or the reason behind someone else's tragedy. My mother has always been there for me and my siblings. She never blamed us for the family's problems, and she certainly never used her sadness to burden us emotionally. But I understand now that this battle isn't just about me. It's about the well-being of my siblings, too, who are also suffering under the pressure from my father and stepmother. My mother has begun working with a lawyer to see if it's possible to change the custody order, and I know that if that happens, we'll finally have a chance to escape the shadow of this never-ending family conflict. And even though I don't know what the future holds, I do know that I can't continue living in an environment where I'm constantly blamed, criticized, and emotionally hurt by the very people who are supposed to love me unconditionally. I can't change the past, but I can choose how I live moving forward. And one thing I am absolutely sure of: I will no longer let anyone hurt me again. My family life had always been filled with conflict and tension, but when the situation with my father and stepmother reached its peak, I realized it was time for me to stop. My relationship with my father was no longer just about disappointment and anger. It was about exhaustion, about the fatigue of constantly trying to please people who never truly understood or respected my feelings. I couldn't endure living in an environment where I wasn't allowed to be myself, where I was constantly forced into unreasonable expectations and burdened with guilt that my father placed on me. When my mother began working with a lawyer to change the court's custody order, I found myself standing at a major crossroads in life. If this succeeded, my siblings and I could be protected from the control and pain inflicted by our father. But I also knew that if this change happened, we would be facing a fierce legal battle, one that might make our family situation more strained than ever before. My mother has always fought to shield us from harm, but now she's also fighting not just for our rights, but for the stability and peace in her own life. I feel like I can't just stand by and do nothing, yet at the same time, I know I can't force myself to keep living in the wreckage of these relationships. I'm well aware that no matter what changes, this family will never be a place where I can find complete safety and happiness. But that doesn't mean I have to continue enduring unnecessary pain. I have the right to decide how I live my life, and I won't let the dark memories of the past control my future. Broken relationships are not the end. I understand now that what happened in my family was not my fault, and I can no longer live under that guilt. No matter how hard my father tries to make me feel responsible for his mistakes, I won't let that pressure break me. In the end, I decided to cut all contact with my father, not because I don't love him, but because I need to protect myself and the people I love. My father will probably never understand this decision, but I can't live my life just to make him happy. My mother has always stood by me no matter how hard things got, and she's the only one I know who would never blame me or anyone else in this family. I've chosen my real family, the ones who love and respect me. The truth is, I can't change the past, but I can take control of the future. I won't let my family's breakdowns make me afraid or weak anymore. I won't let anyone hurt me again. And above all, I've learned that even though family can sometimes be the source of the deepest pain, it's still up to me to choose the path I want to walk. My family life had always been full of conflict and tension, but when the situation between my father and stepmother reached its breaking point, I realized it was time for me to stop. My relationship with my father wasn't just about disappointment and anger. It was about the exhaustion, the emotional drain of constantly trying to please people who would never understand or respect my feelings. I could no longer bear living in an environment where I couldn't be myself, where I was forced to fit into unreasonable expectations and carry the weight of guilt my father placed upon me. When my mother began working with a lawyer to change the court's custody order, I found myself standing at a major turning point in my life. If it succeeded, my siblings and I could be protected from my father's control and the pain he inflicted. But I also understood that if the custody change went through, we would be facing a brutal legal battle, one that could make our family situation more strained than ever. My mother has always done her best to shield us from harm, but now she is also fighting not only for our rights, but for her own peace and stability. I feel like I can't just stand by and do nothing, but at the same time, I know I can't force myself to keep living in the destruction of these relationships. I know clearly that no matter how things change, this family will never be a place where I can find complete safety and happiness. But that doesn't mean I have to continue suffering from unnecessary pain. I have the right to take control of my life and not let the dark memories of the past dictate my future. Broken relationships are not the final chapter. I understand now that what happened in my family wasn't my fault, and I can no longer live under that guilt. No matter how hard my father tries to make me feel responsible for his mistakes, I won't let that pressure break me.